Jessica Jane Molebatsi and her husband Wandile have created a fashion business founded on love, unity and storytelling. Through their brand Molebatsi, they're aiming to bridge cultures through fashion. That's what it's all about. You're speaking my language. Welcome to Afternoon Express, Jessica.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be with you, Palisa.
Now, if we were to look at your brand, I mean, you've got these timeless silhouettes, but still deeply rooted in all things South African. Tell me more about the brand story and how your personal story fit into it.
I started my own label in 2011. It was primarily based on speaking to femininity and what I believe femininity to be. And then eventually, after, it was probably about 9 years or so, I've been married to Wandile in an interracial marriage. I realized I probably had a BA degree in interracial relationships.
Naturally.
Yeah. At that point, we rebranded and we called it Molebatsi by Jessica Jane, from Jessica Jane. And I think that's when the true essence of the brand really had its moment to shine. And that is essentially about speaking to racial and cultural cohesiveness and bringing cultures and races together in the form of fashion and allowing them to live harmoniously in a beautiful range or a beautiful collection.
And your designs are exactly that. You know, it's bold, yet refined. It's soft, but still deeply rooted in all things heritage. And not only have you created something, but you've created something to be remembered. You've spoken about your business partner being your husband. Yes. Now, pleasure, business together. How is that working out, number one? And number two, does he have any creative say in the work that you put together? Or is he strictly the admin?
You know, I always think back to COVID and how many couples were like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna kill my partner. Wendy and I were the complete opposite. We can spend an abnormal amount of time together talking about I don't know what, but we get along and we can spend a lot of time in each other's company. And obviously within our marriage, we balance each other out. And I think Wendy was ultimately working within the business before it became official that he was a founder within the business. So I think it was just a natural progression for him to be seen and a part of it. And I think us being seen together speaks to our purpose. So yeah, we found it pretty easy.
You blend African prints with European, Western kind of silhouettes in such a natural way. How are you able to bring this to life? I mean, looking at the shirt that you're wearing alone now just speaks to the creativity.
It happens quite naturally. What we've intended to do was bring in my ancestral heritage and Wandi's ancestral heritage, mine being of a few European backgrounds, French being one, and Wandi being Tswana Xhosa. So yeah, the print is actually a French print called a toile de joie, but we've incorporated very uniquely South African images, some with an ethnic leaning or not. And then again, the silhouettes, it's very purposeful, it's very thought out, it's a blend of cultures and they need to come and marry together.
And you're telling a story through your garments, and for me, there is nothing more invaluable than being able to hand things down to that next generation that speak to our forefathers that have been. You've also been able to be quite passionate and you love out loud when it comes to your mentorship moments and that campaign. What drew you to that?
I got a phone call requesting to be a mentor and I didn't really hesitate, I don't think, to be that mentor. International casting, Fashion Kids and Mervyn. It's just such an amazing program. I think what I saw was that this is not just an organization that's wanting to teach kids how to model and for them, all the children to simply make money. It's really, really a betterment program, an educational program, an inclusivity program, and it really is educating and creating girls and boys that are fierce but have a humility about them in the world. And that really meant a lot to me, considering knowing the industry, what can happen. I just felt that the morals were hugely advantageous to them as children, but also, you know, the world we're making going forward.
They're in alignment with what you're passionate about. And, you know, as you do speak, it reminds me, and it's quite reminiscent of a Nelson Mandela quote. And he says, There's no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. When you look at the creative industry and where we find ourselves right now, where do you think we are taking it when it comes to nurturing that next generation?
I must say the first thing that comes to mind for me is that the arts and the creative industry is not necessarily taken seriously. And I think people underestimate how many people nowadays are going into the arts, and that being in the arts isn't a luxury. It's actually our lives. And I think if people put back into and took the creative industry a little bit more seriously, as, you know, corporate or industrial sectors, I think that'll better so many children in the future, because people are going to choose to go into the arts, and presently it's very difficult, and I feel unnecessarily so. I think more could be put into the industry and it could benefit the country even in the long run, so why not?
And if you were to give advice to any creative out there, regardless of the field, what would that be, especially when it comes to merging culture, passion and fashion?
I think as a creative, you go out there and your heart is on your sleeve, and it can be incredibly exhausting. So my piece of advice would always be to find your purpose as early on as you possibly can and stick to that purpose, because as long as you're doing that, it doesn't matter how outwardly you're perceived to be doing, because you're speaking to your purpose. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the thing that's going to shine.
Thank you so much, Jessica, not only for sharing all of these nuggets of wisdom, but also the fashion. It's the look, it's the attitude, and it's the purpose behind it. Siyabonga siswam.
Thanks, Melissa.
Jessica and her brand are a shining example of the South African Nelson Mandela fought for, where we are not divided by our differences, but rather united through them.